We are live on the Recyard every Wednesday night. Hey, everybody. It is 7 o'clock Central Time, and we are on the Recyard Women's Prison Podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toonchi.
Toonchi, we have a beautiful guest with us tonight.
Hey, you know how it is. When I told her I was going to rec, she got all, I don't know. You know, sometimes you have to take your woman with you out to the rec yard when you go see a friend. It's just how it goes sometimes.
So y'all are not together though, right?
No, we're not.
Yeah.
Only in Jennifer's wild imagination.
Which we actually saw a lot of that happening in the penitentiary as well. People kind of making up their own realities about it happens. But welcome to the show, Lori Mellinger. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a great show for y'all tonight. We're talking about mental health and how it relates to incarceration and how it's criminalized in this country, and how if you have mental health problems, you can quite easily land behind bars. We see you in the chat already. Hello, Carrie. Thank you for joining. And Lori is a fellow lioness. She is a fierce fighter for the recovery community and the reentry community, and we are lucky to have her presence and expertise tonight.
I'm so excited.
Marci's always so kind.
Let's let folks know that it was almost just you and me here, Lori, till Marci got here because she's traveling, and it could have been bad.
It could have been different. Y'all would have handled it. But I was traveling, and I have to say, coming from LAX to, I'm actually in Burbank, California. I'm going to be doing some filming tomorrow, but I had no idea how far Burbank was from LAX when I strategically planned the time of my flight and everything. And then I got in the Uber, and it said like it's 29 miles, but it's 73 minutes because I'm in LA traffic. So I was concerned. So thank you so much, Lori, because you were going to really come in hot. And now you're still coming in hot, just in a different way. But you were going to pick up the slack, because what we do know is that when Jennifer has full control of things, she'll just talk and talk and talk.
She will.
Yes,
she will.
We have to have somebody able to guide that. So before we get to the show, if I can figure out how to do this, and you did get a haircut, it does look nice.
See there, Lori?
Let's do a weekly recap. I cut you off because I wasn't sure what was coming after that, Lori.
Well, I stand corrected. I've been thinking a lot, what would Marci do? What would Marci do? I felt like Marci would roast her about her hair.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, it is an old man haircut, but but it does look nice. You're rocking with that pappy vibe.
Well, I mean, nobody can bring the pap like me. So.
Yeah, let's get to what we did last week. And before we do that, I want to remind everybody for hitting that. If you're watching on your phone, tap that screen, hit the like, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for all of your support. This is literally our favorite night of the week. Toonch, how was your week?
Well, I mean, it was work, but this weekend was such a delight. So we had the Texas Tribune Festival in town here in Austin. I waited all day, one of those days, to be able to ask a panel of senators, can we count on them as formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated Texans to end the heat crisis? I waited all day for that. They said yes, and I'm going to hold each one of them to that. And then
wait, I want you to tell exactly how, because you stood up there and one of the representatives was hesitant, and it's my representative that
Yeah.
was hesitant. Are we going to say the name?
It was Phil King.
It was, yeah,
It was Phil King.
Representative Phil King, who is in my district. And when you asked him flat out, can we count on your vote this session for climate control in Texas prisons, he waited you out. He
There
wanted
was
to
a
move
there was
on.
a little wait there, a little uncomfortable silence in a room full of people till he was like, "Yeah, I mean, yeah." And I wasn't leaving that microphone until I got that, and I did, and I'm going to hold on to that.
Well, I want to let you know that I sent him a thank you card to his
Wonderful.
office in Weatherford, in
Then
Parker
you
County.
make sure that you and Britt and others, continue to go to that office. And now that we
Absolutely.
have his commitment to bring humane temperatures to our prisons, no, there's so much value to going to the Texas Tribune Festival because you never know who you're going to see. You're going to meet legislators, media. Um, Carrie Blakinger was in town, and I got to spend time with her. Taylor, if you haven't seen the video, please check it out on my social media. Taylor came out.
Taylor
Okay?
the cat.
Taylor, my cat, came out while we were laying on the couch and head butted Carrie several times, which is, if you're a cat person, that means hello. I see you. She was very excited. She was doing biscuits. She was purring. And that's been about 3 years in the making for that to happen. So that was a joy. And then you and Donice came to town. You sat on the panel, and I'll let you tell people how the panel went. And then we were able to hang out with each other, which is always a good time. And then the next day I went and hung out with Mandy and Peaches, and it was the Cubs' 3rd birthday, and we had good food and presents. So it was just a really great weekend with all my friends.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. And that Texas Tribune panel, man, I was hoping to come down. Denise was my guest, and I was hoping to come down and bring her and stay for a few days. And life happened. My kiddos happened. And, we're having just a little bit of setback there with my nephews stuff, and so I had to be there for them, and so it just didn't work out. But coming down for the actual panel on it was titled Uncool, and it was me and Richard Linklater, who's a producer who also is a friend of one of the plaintiffs, and a passionate activist when it comes to dangerous temperatures inside of Texas prisons, as it turns out. And then another organization had a representative there. Anyway, I think it was good. I felt like it went really well. You were there. What I loved about going is I I was it was packed, but I also felt it was packed and I wasn't saying a lot of things that people didn't already know. I wish that we had some new ears hearing the problem. I think that they probably got more information to share, but I don't think that they were already on board, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, but also that I felt like I had a lot of support. It was really great. I mean, on the whole front row there on the right was all of us, all of our peeps, and it was really wonderful and so important for me. That happened when I testified again in the hearing in federal court. I was able to look out and make eye contact with several people, with you and Benika Dixon and Peaches and just several. We just had a lot of people there supporting, and then again, we had a lot of people.
Now, Lori, I was scared. I was scared because Marci put me in charge of her phone to record the video. And Dawnese was sitting next to me, and she steadied my hand. I was like, if I screw this up, I'm dead. I'm dead. And I didn't.
You
And I
did a
got
great
up and
job.
asked a question. So me and
Yes.
Dawnese worked together, and Lauren did a fantastic job moderating the panel. So it went really well.
Yes, absolutely it did. Yeah, the film is great. The filming is great, and I will stream that on my platforms this weekend, so everyone can see the whole thing if you're interested in seeing it. But no, you did great. I was really proud of you.
I
Um,
I feel
yeah.
like Donice gets a lot of credit for that.
Now, Donice is here tonight. She's
I
in the
know I
chat.
should.
Donice, now, sister, I looked out sometimes, and let me tell you about my friend Denise Cherry. She's right here saying hello, Lori. Let me tell you about Denise Cherry. We can be mid conversation and she can doze off and then wake up and pick right back up whatever we were
She
talking.
doesn't miss a beat.
I mean,
She
and
doesn't miss a
there
beat.
were during the panel, and I'll have to say we did leave Dallas area early. We traveled. I mean, it was a long, run to the panel, get ready, hot, all of these factors. Yeah, she was asleep. I looked out. I looked out, and I see all my people, and I see Alicia Castillo shaking her head, yes, and Justin saying, yeah, and Jennifer holding the phone, and little old Denise with her eyes closed.
Hey, now in all fairness, it was quite warm under that tent. And we're conditioned once it starts getting warm, our body says it's time to hibernate. So there was
Yeah,
a little bit of that, but we were just really excited to see Linus and Marcy represented in such a huge way. It was pretty cool. It was pretty
I
cool.
do know something about Lori's week. You bought
Ooh.
an airline ticket to New York.
Oh, I sure did. I bought tickets for New York. I'm so excited. Jennifer is not excited at all. I'm going to see her while I'm there, but Ariana and I are going a couple of days early so that we can absorb things because it really is our favorite city.
Oh, yeah, you're going with your daughter. I mean, for a second there, I thought you were going to that porn festival that
Get
you talked about.
That I
on.
talked about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Get on
Yeah.
somewhere, Toonchi.
Somebody
Leave her
somewhere.
alone. I want to say you just major shout outs. It's National Recovery Month, and you are in recovery. Your daughter is in recovery, and 20 years ago you might have not foreseen this time in your life where you can fly out to New York to see your daughter graduate from a leadership program, a well-known well a well-known leadership program, and that you could fly out early and spend time with her, and it makes my heart so happy to
Yeah.
know that that's happening.
Yeah. Gosh, Marcy just gets all sincere and gets me choked up, but you're absolutely right. I never dreamed that either one of us maybe would be in that place.
Yeah, I'm really proud of y'all and everyone in our group, and I'm proud of you all that are watching that are early in the steps, right? Maybe you just got out of prison, or maybe you're just now thinking about recovery, and maybe you haven't even started yet, but you're already starting to think about the possibilities. And people like Lori and her daughter, and Toonch, and so many people in our group that I hope that you can see yourself in one of us and know that change is possible, and that's coming. And even if you have severe mental health issues, which is what we're talking about tonight, which the three of us, we suffer from mental health issues. And so we're experts in our own mental health, and experts in knowing what happens in Texas women's prisons and jails when it comes to mental health care. So that I want to jump into the show. Are you ready for that, Toonch?
Let's do it. Let's do it. No
Well,
hold.
I want to talk about, first of all, just your lived experience, Toonch, which was 30 years inside of the Texas prison system, starting at a very young age. And I know that you probably don't have. I've read the statistics, and I believe they're lower. I mean, I believe the actual statistic is much higher, but I've read something like 65% of incarcerated people in this country suffer from mental health disorders of some sort. And from my experience, I believe it's much higher than that. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, I think in the all the years that I was incarcerated, I mean, almost everyone there had a mental health disorder or problem, and or substance use disorder, which I would like Lori to talk about. Is that a mental health disorder? Is it separate? Is it comorbid? What does that look like? But certainly, I would almost say everybody that we were incarcerated with had some type of mental health problem, for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like even if you went in and we did see things that just happened just out of whack, like somebody was just giving somebody a ride, or we
Mhm.
did see that kind of thing. But once you were in the system and you went through the trauma of the trial, or of going to court, or of telling your family, and then the trial of, or the trauma of incarceration and getting into prison, you probably need mental health care. Dare I say, every single person that is incarcerated needs mental health care on some level.
What if you didn't go, if you were one of those folks that got caught up in something, like wrong place, wrong time, they're there. But certainly every single person leaving that system has a mental health problem, for
For
sure.
sure. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, let's let Lori talk to us about the correlation between mental health and substance misuse. And also, Lori, because I forget, even though my wife is in that recovery world, she corrects me all the time. Please first tell me what the right language is when we're talking about someone who it has a substance issue. How should we word that in a way that it brings hope and light and not pushes people down?
Well, yeah, I mean, first, I wish I'd prepared a little bit more because I didn't know Jennifer's question would have me put on that doctor hat. But the language is so easy, y'all. It's such person-centered language. It's when you think about us as formerly incarcerated people, we don't call ourselves, at least most of us, not anymore, ex-cons or convicts or inmates or offenders. We use person-centered language, and so that is maybe a person who's suffering from substance use disorder, a person with alcohol use disorder, anything that's more person-centered versus that label is really okay. But when all else fails, I always suggest that you ask the person, because typically when you ask, people are kind enough to tell you, and it really shows that you're approaching people with empathy and with kindness and with understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, back in the day, and I don't really see it much anymore, but that old language of substance abuse, right? Like, and it gave this connotation of negativity and shame, around the word abuse. So, what are we really talking about? We're just talking about um, substance use, some substance use or misuse, right? Like, it is right, like using person-centered language to make sure that we see the whole person and not just the disorder.
One of the things that I really had to get used to, especially coming from this life where I maybe talk a little more street, is there's other things that I probably don't say anymore. When I talk about going to parole, or dropping dirty, or probation and you drop dirty, I don't say that stuff anymore. I don't even say relapse anymore. Um, Nationally and really person centered, we call that return to use, trying to take those negative connotations away from things.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't want to, because when we're all together, we'll all start talking
I want to move on to the show, but I also just want to just get your, like, the recurrence of use. I have been told that that is a normal path to recovery and it can happen. And so I wanted just to get your opinion on that.
Wow, I think that so much has changed in my recovery walk that the language that I used to use, the thoughts that I used to have, those things just don't apply anymore. I yesterday was my freedom versary, and I've been out of prison now for 9 years, and it's been a journey. And I've been in and out of recovery, as we call it, for a long time. I used to joke, I tried it in my 20s and it just didn't take, right? And so what I say now is I've been in long-term and sustained recovery since I went to prison, since I got out of prison. And and so, yes, to your question, to your point, Marcy, returning to use sometimes is a part of the journey. Sometimes it isn't. I think that what's beautiful about the way that I see recovery now is, number one, I go by our national standards and our definitions of any positive change, right? And knowing that there are multiple pathways, which I used to not buy into, and even understanding harm reduction in ways that I never understood it before. I think this has definitely been a journey, both internally with my job, and really eye opening. And I think that what it's led to is this journey towards not just radical love and acceptance for myself, but for other people. And I think that's the goal, right?
Well said, Lori. Thank you so much. Again, we're talking about mental health and the criminalization of mental health, but it is Recovery Month, and we do have a recovery and reentry specialist on the show with us. And so, Mandy Zapata, who is also our good friend and fellow Lioness leader, Mandy says, "How do you hold each other accountable during recovery when return to use happens?"
It's, always leave it to Mandy to ask really tough, smart questions, and difficult ones. And
Yes.
it's hard to answer. So how do you hold somebody accountable? How do you hold somebody accountable? How do you hold each other accountable? And I'll just be honest with all of you. I tell people at work, and at my job, you're either in recovery or you are an ally to recovery. And a lot of what that means for my coworkers are 12-step meetings. But I tell my coworkers, my community is my recovery. And that, I think, that speaks to what Mandy is asking. How do you hold people accountable? And I rely on my community to do that, whether it's my mental health, Jennifer, um, whether it's return to use. And gosh, Mandy, this is easier said than done, but I think with love, and I'm the queen of boundaries, with love and with boundaries.
I mean, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say I think accountability is definitely linked to boundaries, and I mean, that's how you do it, right? Like, you can't make people, you can't force people.
Mhm.
And a person's journey to recovery includes that return to, for mental health, return to symptom, right?
Mhm.
Like, I've had that same kind of journey with my borderline personality disorder, where my own family has said, "Hey, this is the last go around with you. You better get it together, or this is a boundary," right? And so my family set a boundary with me. My friends set a boundary with me. And that is what keeps me accountable. And the radical honesty that happens in our community and with my friends, right? Like if I do something or say something, which the past year's been a tough one in terms of, like, hey, guess what? I need to be honest with you. This is how you hurt me. This is how your behavior, through your mental health disorder, or your, like you talked about earlier about language, like a lot of our ways that we see the world and interact with the world are through our lens of prison culture and trauma. Um, Having that honesty, and then those people setting that boundary with me,
Mhm.
and me being able to do that with other people, because I feel like, um, when you have close relationship and community, I can say, "Hey, Lori, look, I'm not and I'm just using it as an example. I'm not judging you. You can drink all you want, drink all you want, but honey, I'm starting to get a little concerned because you know, you kind of you kind of had a lot the other night, and you acted out in front of people that I know in ways that you are not going to be proud of the next morning. So I'm starting to see an escalation that I think maybe is starting to be concerning, right? Like, that is honesty. And I think that is a huge part of accountability. I mean, I think transitioning into talking more about mental health, I mean, certainly y'all give me that. Like, how do y'all hold me accountable? How has Mandy held me accountable when I'm like, well, you know what? How about you go yourself and I don't give. Okay, well, Jennifer, I hear you and I know you're upset, but when you communicate like that, it shuts people down. I'm like, well, all right. Right. Like, so I'm curious because we all here struggle with mental health. Like, what are the ways in your mental health symptoms and struggles do you hold yourself accountable to yourself and other people? What helps you?
What is so funny about my personal mental health is, and I'm also diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and which our cutoff game is strong. You know, we can get mad, and if we feel offended, you don't even have a chance sometimes. You may have not even meant to offend us, and it's in our mind, and and we're never opening ourselves up again, and it's no big deal to us, and I think that a lot of symptoms like that in prison were kind of a flex.
Mhm.
It made you feel and appear like you didn't care, like it was no thing, no sweat off your back, nobody could hurt you, nobody could get you. It came off as confidence when really it was, and so holding myself accountable didn't happen until I got home, really, because in there, I even remember people being like, "She better not mess with me. I'm bipolar and da da da." Like it was almost a flex, all of it, or just so common that I don't know. And so I get home, and some of that thinking it's not common anymore, and it's starting to occur to me that this isn't really how I should handle some of my problems. And then actually I do care about the people in my life. So if they've offended me, that's a big thing for me to if they've offended me, I need to at least make an attempt myself because I care about the person instead of
Hmm.
I don't know. I catch myself, another thing, BPD, another symptom is definitely irrational thinking. And there are times when, even since I've been home, where I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. Oh, TikTok account, that doesn't matter. This podcast doesn't matter. My work with Linus doesn't matter. None of it matters. I'm fixing to just, and it's just this blow up moment. My marriage doesn't matter. My parents don't matter. It's just this like everybody's better without me kind of, and there are days that still comes. uh so how do I hold myself accountable? It's usually one of y'all. Not
Yeah.
me. It's usually like one of y'all saying, "Hey, Marcy, get your shit together now." And that's how we talk to each other, and maybe that's not for everybody, but it's for us, and it's the language that we understand.
Mhm.
As, "Hey, get your shit together. I know you're feeling all that because I've been there myself. Remember last week when this happened, but girl, you got a life to live, and I count on my community."
Yeah. Yeah. I think, go ahead.
It's an act of love. It really is an act of love. Now, how you deliver it and how I deliver it versus how I used to deliver it and how I'm still working on delivering it. But being honest with your community really is an act of love.
Well, it's super hard though, right? Like, because at the core of our mental health disorders is I am unlovable and no one loves me. And so therefore I do not trust others, right? So, like, I'm thinking about just the ways our mental health disorders are criminalized by the system, right? Like all the ways that we have acted out in our mental health symptoms, especially of personality disorders. And we've talked a lot about this, how women seem to manifest those a lot of the women we were locked up with were just like us. Like, we all shared some very same symptoms. And that really disturbs me to think that, well, why there's no coincidence that that these prisons are full of people with personality disorders for women, which is all rooted and developed in trauma, right? And the system, the way that the system demonizes our particular mental health disorder, like Glenn Close and Fatal Attraction, or Girl Interrupted. Like there's this narrative around our mental health disorders, that kind of comes with a moral failing, that the court and the judges and society looks at us as this moral failing, instead of really understanding why we're behaving the way that we do. Now, that's not an excuse, and I think Donise is kind of alluding to that. I see her comment in the chat here about, well, what do you do when you're there for somebody and then they return back to use or their symptoms, and then they think you're against them, and and then you don't, it's complicated, right? Like it is, but I really see the ways that the system completely criminalizes and punishes us simply for having mental health disorders overall, not supplying the resources on the front end, and certainly punishing us when something happens.
Well, I was in, I spent time in the prison psych hospital, about 6 months in the middle of my sentence. And when I was there, everyone was getting diagnosed with personality disorders. And I get back from there and I end up on the Lane Murray unit, shout out K2 Alpha. Lainey was my window bunkie. And Lainey said, "Oh, I've been diagnosed with that also." And I said, "Girl, but everybody there had personality disorders. They're just trying to tell them something." And she said, "Well, let's look," because she had a book on borderline personality disorders, and we studied it together. She had to study her own because that's how you do in there, and she's like, "Do you see this? Do you see this? Now think about who you know that got diagnosed also. Like, are they just
right?"
She's like, the issue is not that it's a blanket diagnosis. The issue is that they're locking all of us up.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not getting the care or the treatment in the
Mm-hmm.
free world. Instead, it's escalating to incarceration.
Or
Yeah.
we are treating that with substances.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. That co-occurring.
That perfect storm that always leads to incarceration.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Like the things that happen that are kind of, they say personality disorders, there can be a genetic component. But for the most part, the theory is that it is developed through childhood trauma and traumatic events when you're younger. So if those things were treated and actually dealt with in society, then we would have shaped our personalities differently, right? Like it feels like being punished for the things that happened to you as a child, right? Like, and it's not to say that we don't have responsibility for the ways that we, act out inappropriately when we're symptomatic, but just to feel like, damn, you just at every turn, it's your fault. And we all know that being something core in our disorder, we already feel like everything's our fault. And this only reaffirms it, right? It's your fault. It's your fault. Everything's your fault. You were reacting a lot of times when we act out, right? It's called reactive abuse. It's because something has happened to us, and the only way I know what to do is to escalate, to get eyes on it, or to get people to leave me alone. And that escalation is often, for most of us, something very egregious, whether it's large sums of money disappearing and being spent, or whether it's somebody dying or somebody getting their house caught on fire. Like when we escalate, it's pretty bad, but it is a desperate attempt to be heard. And guess what happens? It's our fault. It only reaffirms that we're to blame and to be punished. And it just seems like this cycle that feeds on itself, especially when the system's involved.
We have some great comments in the chat that I want to bring to light. Mandy Zapata says, because of the past stigma of mental health, so many were undiagnosed, and that turned into substance misuse or reactive behavior. And absolutely, we do know that people self-medicate for a number of reasons, and it's not usually external pain. It's usually something internal that they're trying to fix. So thank you for that, Mandy. Johnny Gonzalez says one of the biggest triggers for himself are when he's scolded, corrected, treated like a child. He knew what was wrong, and everyone wanted to punish for it because no one had the education or experience to support him through it. And I think that that's huge. And I love that more education is coming to the front. It's becoming, I mean, there's still a stigmas there, right? And obviously it's still, mental health issues are still very much criminalized. However, there are a lot more with social media platforms. There are a lot more education that I think people are getting and starting to have a more of an understanding. There are some really good creators that their entire platform is based on their mental health disorder, and goes into detail. And Jerry wants to talk about just that addiction isn't always, a substance. It isn't always a cigarette or a drink, that sometimes it's relationships. And she brought that up earlier, that toxic relationships are a way. And I am not a doctor or healthcare provider, mental health care provider. However, I do think that that's a side effect of a mental
Oh yeah.
health is choosing
toxic relationships, right? Like, I mean, just using the framework of borderline personality disorder, we are drawn like magnets to people with narcissistic personality disorder. They're the same coin, but two sides. They have core wounds that are exactly the same, but those personality disorders manifested, but they're just the polar opposites of each other. So they attract. And you talk about an explosive, toxic, we are constantly triggering each other's core wounds in very unique ways that speak to us. And I had a therapist when I was like, I just don't, what is it that I cannot get? It's my ex-girlfriend in Houston. I don't mind saying it. I believe she had histrionic personality disorder, which is kind of in the middle of both of those. I hope we don't get sued for libel or something. But anyway,
say your name.
Right. So, my therapist, I said, I don't know. It is very much like, so I may not have substance use disorder, but I know what it feels like to be caught in addiction, because those disorders, toxic relationships and toxic maladaptive coping, is meant to trigger addictive things in our brain to keep us addicted to that person. Why did we do that with personality disorders? Well, guess what? Well, Lori's never going to leave me, right? Like, because she's addicted to me now. She's addicted to this dopamine that I give her when I pay attention to her and love bomb her and give her all this love, and then I take it away. No explanation, disappear, right? Like, that literally creates that intermittent reinforcement, right? So Jerry's right. It is the toxic, and Lori has said it many times. Almost all the women I know, you ask them what happened, and they're going to point to a man, a relationship, a romantic relationship.
Story starts with, there was this man.
Right. There was this man.
And now my friend Jason, who just got out about a year ago, will counter to me with, I don't know, on our side, sometimes it's every sad story starts with, there was this bitch. So,
well, and it is those toxic dynamics that are rooted in mental health conditions. Healthy, securely attached people are not attracted to toxic behavior in people. They're not, right? Like attracts alike.
Right.
So then we see those toxic relationships inside of the prison walls. And that's where, when we're talking about violence in women's prisons, we're generally talking about domestic violence. And we saw some of those explosive relationships inside, for certain.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's absolutely magnified when you're in a women's prison. And I remember, y'all, And if she's ever watching this too, her name was Hope. I'm gonna put it out there. It was Hope.
Shit, here we
And
go.
baby, let me tell you something. I don't know what it was about Hope, but she hit that place inside of me that made my BPD obsessive, because all people with BPD have a favorite person. We have a person we obsess on. We manifest our whole everything into this person. And I don't know why this girl triggered me like that, but she did, and it was great until she decided, which, guess what? She did that very same thing. We were together and boom, boom, and all this stuff. She sends a kite through Chow that breaks up with me, no warning.
Not through a kite.
Yeah, through a kite, and
No.
then had the nerve.
You're there trying to get your hamburger helper.
Girl. Well, and let me tell you something. I knew something was wrong. You talk about, I try to reframe our BPD symptoms to be superpowers instead of like, things that are bad for us, right? We know when somebody's energy and tone is off immediately. Now, we may get it wrong why, but you can't, bitch, her tone just changed. Like her eyes just moved a certain, like we are hyper vigilant. And she walked in the chow hall and she was like, hey, and I knew something was wrong right then. Right? I was like, what's wrong? And I started getting nervous and freaked out. Sent me a kite and said, hey, I don't want to be with you anymore. I want to be with Melanie. And I'm thinking, if you're okay, we could still be together, but I'm going to be with her too. Girl, I was from 0 to 100. Y'all, my symptoms were so bad, I wrote her the nastiest letter. And y'all know how nasty and vicious my words are when I'm triggered. It was decimating. And then I wouldn't go out because I knew I'm going to beat this girl's ass. I'm going to do something insane. I broke out in shingles. I stayed in the dorm all weekend and I broke out in shingles. I was so stressed out because I was like, if I don't work through my BPD symptoms now and break this, I'm going to get out one day, even if I do my whole sentence, and I'm going to do the same damn thing again that got me here the past 2 times. And they had to do with me being triggered like this, just like that. And it was hard, y'all, but I did it. And I remember there was a guard that I just really couldn't stand. And she said, oh, I know you saw Hope walk by. You want to make parole. That's why you didn't jump on her. I said, no, because I want to stay out of prison once I do go home. And she was like, I don't understand. I said, no, you wouldn't. Right. You wouldn't. Now, right. Y'all know there's been some tests out here, but I passed it. And that goes back to Marci talking about, we had to study our disorder and learn how to give ourselves, through our community, therapy and help to stabilize, because TDCJ sure the fuck wasn't doing it.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about mental health inside of correctional facilities. And I think that I want to start with county jail, which I think Lori maybe has more experience in county jails with. What did you see? Yeah. Yeah. Not to put you out there, Lori.
No, I got a lot of experience in county jail. I went from sitting on the bench to the tank, to getting housed, to hitting that button and saying, take me and house me. That's how comfortable I got going to jail. But they always called it going to the psych, and it was always dropping a form, and it was always quite a time period later, but there was always an underlying reason. And that reason usually had to do with sleeping, getting on something before they went to prison so that they would be prescribed something to better help them sleep. And mostly that's what I saw. I don't know about the culture that you county jail, but the culture in county jail was a lot like the culture in TDCJ. This is none of anyone's business. This is not even something I necessarily know is going on. There might have been a reason why women would go to psych, but it was never, I never saw it as the reason to get better. There was always a motive. And I just want to say that I was addicted to benzos for a number of years, went to county jail and cold turkeyed it and almost died. I blacked out. I woke up. I was in SAG. They put me in high risk after that. And the culture of county jail is you don't tell people anything. You don't tell them if you're, suffering through something. You just don't do that.
I would agree with you. Yes. In county jail, you're not accessing mental health services because, oh, I think, and I think, Marcy, you'll agree too, in TDCJ, no, you're not. You're not, because they're not going to help you. They're
Right.
going to criminalize you by putting you in SEG or putting you on suicide watch or something. So we all knew, don't go to them people and actually tell them what's wrong. You cannot trust them. And don't get me started on TJJD, right? But county jail, yeah, girl, you're going there to get some, to handle your business, to be strategic, because
Mhm.
you're not getting any real care.
And just like the girls they were walking it all the way through. Am I going to prison? Am I likely to get safe P? Do I need to be on meds? Because that will predict which unit I'm going through to for safe P. Those were the things we were thinking all the way through, because you best believe I had no idea what my real mental health struggles were until I took all the substances out of my system.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you brought that up about medication because of safe P. Which, do I need to get on it? Do I need to get off it? And now we're seeing a lot of that inside of TDCJ because of the heat.
Mm-hmm.
If I get on medicine, I could be on air condition, maybe possibly. But when I had that breakdown in the middle of the sentence. In my sentence, I got prescribed psych medication, and I took it. And then when I became eligible for parole review again, I dropped it, because the Safe P program, that if you took psych meds, is 3 months longer than the one if you don't. And even though I did not have any substance use history, they love to dish Safe P out, and they did end up giving it to me. And that was one of I actually dropped mine because of that. And then, Jen, I wanted to talk about the trust. So how do we offer mental health care in a carceral setting where there's such a mistrust of staff?
You can't. You can't. You can't. And this is the thing that I think, I was just telling somebody today. I bet I sound like the most pessimistic person in the state of Texas. I doubt it, but maybe, because every time somebody comes to us about, well, we can offer this and we can do this, I'm not saying there's zero value to it, especially if it is an outside nonprofit that is not a part of the system, right? Like, yes, overall, is therapy and treatment, can you really soak that in the way you need to heal in a carceral setting? The answer is absolutely not, right? Because in order to heal, in order to create that relationship with your therapist, or the people in your group setting, it involves trusting the staff there, and that's not going to happen, period. Right? I don't care how well meaning I remember during one presentation, a lady from Harris County that worked at the juvenile probation, she says, I work in a facility that houses kids, and they come to my office, and I want them to feel safe to share, and what are the ways I can help that happen? I said, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, but you're not. You're not, right? Because no matter how safe you are, you're sending them back out to a setting where they have to live with predators. And what I mean by predators, I mean the staff. And I'm sorry I used a dehumanizing word, but that's what it felt like. So how am I going to come here and trust you, and then you send me back there, right? In my mind, then you don't care about me.
Right.
Right? That's the way trust works. And without trust in your therapeutic setting, it doesn't work. I don't believe you. Whatever the shit is you're teaching me or telling me, at the end of the day, I just don't believe you.
And on Lane Murray, the psych department is inside of medical, and there's an officer, and they often put pretty aggressive officers in medical because people will drop passes to see other folks or to pass stuff, or and so they don't make it fun in there. And so you have to deal with checking in with a pretty aggressive officer, and you have to deal with them hollering a lot before you go back there. But I wanted to also just paint the picture of what it looked like speaking to the psychiatrist while I was in the prison mental hospital. And that was being handcuffed and escorted to his office, sitting down in a chair with keep staying handcuffed, and the officer not only in the room but with their hand on my shoulder. If anybody has ever gone to a disciplinary hearing from ADSEG, it's that same way. The officer watching, it's the same. Like I felt, and that's what it felt like to me because I had been in enough of those, right? That, yeah, I just remember just telling him literally anything that I thought he wanted to hear to
Mm.
get me back to the unit, and they still kept me for 6 months. I will say though, we had a counselor there, and I wish I remembered her name because I would love to give her a shout out. If you see me and recognize me, ma'am, working at Skyview, know that you did help me because she said some things, and I don't know if she just kept dropping these little random nuggets, and it was enough for me to pick up, and it wasn't enough to make me better, obviously, but it was enough for me to pick up that by the time a year later, it still took me of being pretty deep buried in my mental health um, on the unit. But when I remember, as I was starting to heal a little bit, I was hearing some of those nuggets, and so I think that's important too. Is you know that was people ask like, who helped you? How'd you get out of it? Well, I did. I
Mhm.
remember. I remember like one day just being like, I mean, and I was out of there, y'all. I was doing. If you were in prison, I'd say, "Oh, Marcy doing the most. Marcy doing the most, girl." I was out of there. I didn't think they were ever going to let me go home. I was out of there, and I just remember one day thinking, "Is this it? I mean, if you're going to be here for 20 years, is this what you want your 20 years to look like? Like getting sprayed in the face and get pepper spray, and so yeah."
Yeah. Well, and it's just not a setting. And I love that you acknowledged that there was somebody there that offered something good to you. I do remember a counselor during my time during safety that I was hearing things, that eventually I would be able to process. I just couldn't process it there, and I also tell direct service providers, let me tell you, this method, this stuff that you keep saying that, this is how we should offer mental health treatment in prison and jails, juvenile, 19 years of this with a break in the middle, right? Like I got out and went back. 19 years of that. This, be good and you won't be punished. Even though you don't know how to be good and you don't have the tools and you're in a setting that you don't trust, right? 19 years of this model. And then I get out, and within 4 years, with person centered, free world, community based peer support services, I'm stable. Now, does that mean our mental health and BPD goes away? It gets better, but girl, it's all, y'all know, it's always here and it's about to erupt at any moment. But just like that dinging, and I don't know who's dinging that, but I'm scared it's Lori.
It's my computer. It's my computer, and it's your friend Alba, and I'm sorry. I have to apologize for her.
That's
Um,
okay. I thought it was the elevators. That's why I muted myself. They put me
no,
in this room
I
with
knew.
this horrible
I'm gonna
it's real
die.
it's a
Yeah.
swanky hotel. It's real fancy. I'm like, "Ooh, this is literally what." Then I go to the second floor. So already I'm like, "Okay." And then I'm in the room right by the elevators and the ice machine, and my view is the parking lot. I'm like, "Oh, they
Oh.
hate me."
Well, I wasn't going to blame you because I knew by the second ding, I knew this was Lori and something had gone awry. Now, see, that is I am not well. I'm unhinged underneath everything, but I make the point to say those few years in the world with the right services stabilized my life in the ways that 19 years of bullshit in the system as mental health treatment never did. And the way I stay healthy dealing with all this trauma in my mental health day to day is y'all. It's our friends. It is community. I see a therapist, but it's y'all. that we keep each other, like Mandy was talking about, accountable, and we do that with boundaries, and we do that with honesty. Hey, Jennifer, if you keep snapping off at me like this, I'm not going to call you. Okay, I love you, and I can process that because guess what? I trust y'all,
Right.
and I can say, damn, fine, I'll get it better under control because I know she's serious, she's laid a boundary, and I trust that her intention with me is good, right? And that's where the healing comes from.
We only have 5 more minutes left, and I don't want to like end on this really dreary note, but I do want to talk about the way mental health is criminalized inside of the system. As far as I'm thinking about people that self-harm, and how maybe if you are someone that self-harms, and maybe if an officer spots a cut mark or someone runs you in and they come and look at you, they make you strip. First of all, they're going to make you strip if somebody drops a form and says, hey, she's been cutting on herself. And then they're going to segregate you. They're going to put you in solitary confinement away from the very things that we've been talking about this whole episode, which is community is what helps you. They're going to then isolate that person. And then I also want to bring up people that how many untreated mental health crises there are, and just in my 10 years, 11 people took their lives. 2 staff members, 9 incarcerated people. All 9 of those people were housed in solitary confinement, and both officers worked in that building.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's just a very dangerous place anyway. So I just yeah, what do we do? What do we do about that, Jen? How do we keep people? How do we teach the prison system that that's obviously not the mental health? It's like just lock these people even in a deeper box.
I mean, I think the answer, y'all know, to the core of all of this is our cultural beliefs about who deserves what. And that is harder to change. And this is the way they've always done it. I mean, there's a psychological term called sunk cost fallacy. Means the more I pour in an investment, the
Mhm.
harder it is for me to change my course of action because damn it, I'm in it, and they're so committed to the way that they've always done stuff, regardless of the outcome. But it's cultural, and quite frankly, we shouldn't have carceral settings. I mean, that's a simple answer, but really hard for them to grasp.
From and thank you for that. I didn't mean to just like speed along, but we just have a couple more minutes, and I want to bring up, like, from a reentry aspect, Lori, how do folks coming out of the system that went in with mental health issues, didn't get them taken care of or treated inside, and probably they were exacerbated by their experience inside, then what's the next step for people getting out of prison?
I think that the next step is that level of self awareness that I can be better and how do I get better. And Jennifer mentioned that earlier, peer support, um, your local LMHA sometimes, although that can be a crapshoot, I know. But finding that community who you do trust and who can be honest with you and can guide you to the tools and the resources and the things that you need. I did EMDR for a number of months. I can't imagine doing that in a carceral setting. The short answer is always get therapy, but that in itself has so many barriers to it that you we're hustlers. We can and we do figure it out, but take care of yourself because this freedom thing is all about you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Tunch, any final thoughts for today?
I just really want to acknowledge again how nice my hair looks. Do you see this gray? It gives it this silver wisdom, dapper look. And I just really wanted y'all to spend just 1 minute just really appreciating that.
Pappy did get a new haircut, and if you're listening on Spotify, I'm sorry that you're not seeing seeing the haircut, but please leave us a review anyway, and we would appreciate it. If you are listening anywhere you hear your favorite podcasters, please do leave us a review. If you are here on Facebook or LinkedIn, I see you on YouTube watching. Please do. And here we go. Toonchi always highlights the comments that compliment her. She runs to those. She doesn't help me the whole rest of the show. The whole rest of the show, she stays still over there, and I'm having to keep up. But yes, thank you, Eric, who is noticing Pappy's hairdo. Thank you for liking, sharing this live, and all of the good things. We're so excited to see you every single Wednesday night. We will be back here, same place, same time next week. Lori, thank you so much for being on the
Thanks
show.
for having me. It was
Yeah.
touch and go with my internet. I really appreciate it.
And you made it, and we're so lucky for it. So thank you. We will see you all next week, same time, same place.
Lori's